Hey, 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 everybody. Welcome to the second hour of the Santita Jackson Show, AM 950 Radio, the voice of progressive Minnesota. It is a joy to be with you today. Today, the Rainbow Push International Conference begins. You don't want to miss that as we're going into the Democratic Convention. A lot of our friends were coming to Chicago anyway, so we said we're going to shift the convention from June, Reverend Dr. Yeary, to August because everybody's going to be here. People will be demonstrating. We're having the People's Convention, Attorney Mark Fancher, where people are going to be able to share their thoughts, why they're marching, what it is that they need from the Democrats, and quite frankly, from this whole process. And so we're going to be talking about all of those issues. Indeed, we have a lot of folks who are coming in. We have got the Nation magazine, which will be honoring Reverend Jackson, Senator Bernie Sanders, Congresswoman Ilhan Omar, uh, former state representative Nina Turner, Katrina Vanden Heuvel and the Nation magazine will be leading the charge. Reverend Dr. William Barber, Reverend Al Sharpton, they will all be there. Greg Palast will be showing his movie, Vigilante, on Saturday. You don't want to miss it, Sheila. We got to get people out to see it because he's flying in from Portugal so that we can see his movie in more than 40 states. I don't know if you're aware. Any person can look at the voter rolls and see your name and have you stricken from the rolls. They can challenge. That's happening right now. And so he's going to be talking about that and so much more. And we're going to be meeting with women. We're going to be talking with our young people, our children. We're going to have school supply giveaways, which is really important. We're going to have vaccinations for our kids, and we're giving away the banned books, Sheila Garland. And so there's just a lot going on. Go to rainbowpush.org. But you know what? Today, just start showing up at 930 East 50th Street. Show up at 930 East 50th Street. You will not be turned away. It's going to be something really special because it's going to be a great coming together. We used to call it Harambe. Remember that, Reverend Dr. Todd Yeary, when we were given to using these African phrases that we retrieved, Attorney Mark Fancher. And so just come on back, come on home. Everybody come on home. But let's talk about what's happening in Chicago. You have got people coming from everywhere, and they're not just the delegates. Really, much of the internal matters of the DNC have been decided. So, they've really tried to in all of these conventions, in the RNC and the DNC, there are less conventions and more TV shows. You walk into the convention centers and they feel like sound stages because essentially they are. I mean, really, that's what it is. And I've watched these conventions change. And so even the meetings of the platform committees have changed a lot because there's a lot of control. But what they cannot control now is what's happening at this time. This is a very, very interesting time to be alive. Very interesting time. You have seen the ground shift on the Middle East before our very eyes, a shift that we never thought we'd see in our lifetime. We're now discussing the outsized influence of various lobbying groups, something we haven't discussed in a long time. Now we're really having to look at immigration and migration, not just the fact that migrants are here, but why are they here? We have been trying to overthrow the government, the progressive governments of Venezuela forever. Not because the government wants to do it, but because our corporations use our government and our soldiers to do that. So they're shipping these people all over the country and they're just dropping them. If Gregory Abbott, if the governor of Texas wanted to help the migrant crisis, not bring them into the United States, he wouldn't farm them through the United States. But the tent program for refugees, which I keep telling everybody about, they are now, Tyson is now hiring the refugees. They say that softly that what they're trying to do is settle the refugees. No, they're trying to hire them for cheap. And it's more than 400 companies and it's happening all over the world. That's what's happening. So don't fix the blame, fix the problem. The problem is greedy corporations who have not learned that they should not enslave people, make them wage slaves. That's what's happening right now. We're going to be marching about that. Palestinian rights. The greatest concentration of Palestinians in the country is right here in Chicago. The greatest concentration of the Arab community is in Michigan, but the Palestinians are here in Chicago. But we're not just marching about that. We're going to be marching about Haiti. Great concentration of Haitian Americans are here too. We got a lot that we need to talk about. So I want to know, what are we marching for? What's going to be happening, and what are you going to see in this uh, at this convention? And indeed, we've got Reverend Dr. William Barber coming in early for the Rainbow Push Convention, which begins on the 15th today, but actually yesterday. By the time you hear Senator Bernie Sanders, we will have Nina Turner, we will have Reverend Al Sharpton. We're going to have so many people. Katrina Vanden Heuvel and The Nation magazine will be honoring Reverend Jackson. Uh, it's going to be something you don't want to miss. And we're going to have the people who are marching and the people who are curious. We want you to come to 50th and Drexel, 930 East 50th Street. That will be your home. Yeah, if not now, Jewish Voice for Peace, all of our people, the American Muslims for Palestine, all of them will be there. Everybody's going to be at Push. And that's the way it ought to be. We, of course, welcome to the show once again. This is, by my people. I got my own soul poll, my own panel. Attorney Mark Fancher, National Conference of Black Lawyers. We've got Reverend Dr. Todd Urey, Esquire, Rainbow Push, and the senior pastor of the iconic Douglas Memorial Community Church in Baltimore, Sheila Garland from the Poor People's Campaign of Illinois. And we've got Attorney Darrell Jones, WOL Radio, everybody. Of course, he's the chair of the Transformative Justice Coalition, but every Tuesday at 12 noon Eastern Standard Time, you can hear Attorney Jones and Attorney Barbara Arnwine on their own radio show. Make Noise for Change, community psychologist Dr. LaShawn Latrice, one of the great leaders and organizers in our community. Tariq Khalil, board member of the American Muslims for Palestine. And I think we got Robert Patillo, who just kind of came in. So I'm going to bring him in when he comes back. But Tariq, are you there? I want to start with you. Because many people are focusing on Gaza. And we just gave $20 billion more to Israel just a couple of days ago. That happened under the radar. But have you gotten any permits to be able to demonstrate? I mean, what's going on?
Well, actually, I believe as we speak, probably in a few moments, there's an emergency rally or emergency protest that will be happening outside the city council. Because of the ruling from the circuit court judge that the route that is within reasonable sight and sound was not given to the DNC coalition, and instead the old route, the route from a few months ago, which is really not within sight and within sound, but that's how the judge interpreted it. So there is an appeal, and hopefully that this appeal will be successful, and we'll get the permits. I mean, we understand the politics behind it. Go ahead.
No, I mean, what is pushing you to march at this time? I mean, I've been hearing for months, wait until the DNC gets here. We are going to let them, and not just American Muslims for Palestine, if not now, and people who've been looking at this slaughter in Gaza. I mean, people have been saying that about the migrant crisis, just because we're dealing with so many crises at one time in the United States. I mean, they're international, but they're also domestic crises for us too. What do you want Vice President Harris and Governor Walz to hear, and the Democrats to hear?
And that's what makes it more troubling, is that we are giving so much money to a foreign entity that is in pursuit of demolishing the most densely populated ghetto in the world, Gaza. And with our tax dollars, with our money, with our weapons. And this is overt. It's blatant. It's in our face. And as you mentioned, Santita, we have a lot of issues here domestically. So even if you don't care anything about the people in Gaza, even if you don't care about the Palestinian struggle for justice, as an American civic, you should care very deeply about the fact that our tax dollars, in billions and billions of them, are going to this entity that is committing the first live stream genocide in the world. And we're enabling this genocide with US weapons and US tax dollars. We could use that money here at home to better the educational system in the cities, in the poor cities of our country here. We can use it to help our infrastructure. We can use it to help in terms of housing, in terms of immigration, in terms of providing care for our elderly. I mean, there's so many things that we can do with that money here at home, and we choose not to do that. And we choose to relegate American citizens' concerns for the interest of a foreign entity that is committing this atrocity in Gaza right now. So our message is very, very clear. As AMP Chicago, which is part of the Coalition for Justice in Palestine, this will be the August 21st march, by the way. This will be led by the Coalition for Justice in Palestine. We've been on the streets every single week for the last approximately 10 months. And we've been calling for something very, very basic. When the death toll was around a few hundred, a few thousand, 10,000, tens of thousands, 20,000, 30,000, and now we're at 40,000. And those words and those demands have not been heard by this administration, this Democratic administration, who, if you look at it historically, are perceived to be the ones that care about human values, human rights, liberal values, etc., and are not just turning a blind eye, but directly contributing to the slaughter of my people in Gaza. And so Palestinians and Palestine solidarity activists have a clear message to who we call Genocide Joe. And even though he is not running now for the Democratic ticket, his vice president, who is beholden to his agenda, has not called out what her president is doing and has not indicated a change in policy. All that she's reiterated is this, and she's an attorney, former prosecutor. She knows the English language very well, and she knows the difference between we're working around the clock to get a ceasefire or we're calling for a ceasefire, and we just need the parties to come together. There's a difference between framing it that way and saying we will enforce a ceasefire. She knows the words. She will never use those words because enforce means we have sway over this, and you do. You can tell Israel right now, no more weapons, no more tax money, and you will lose us as an ally if you don't end this genocide right now. So this could end as we speak right now, but there's no political will, there's no courage on the part of this administration, and just because we have a fresh face, a younger face that's now at the head of the ticket, does not mean there's a change in policy. Does not mean there's really a change in posture here. So our message is, you cannot just get our votes. You can't just expect that we're going to fall in line and believe in the Democratic ticket when there's still an ongoing genocide and you're doing nothing about it. So that's our basic message.
Well, I mean, and indeed, Reverend Dr. Yuri, you're part of the group of ministers from all over the country who said that you would withhold your support for the ticket if the Democrats did not call for a ceasefire and did not work toward peace. What is happening now? Because you don't have a Biden there, but you still have a policy in place.
Well, what's happened there is a lot of focus has shifted, quite honestly, in the conversations that have been had over the last 3+ weeks now, since there has been a change in the ticket. So I think the conversation is now being reviewed and reframed in many ways. So the short answer is we will have to see. I think the thing that we have to be clear on, and Brother Khalil is real clear on the focus. What you're going to see, if the question is that, you will see, I think, a lot of activists outside the various venues. There will be conversation inside the room. The question is, in terms of what I would want to see, is who is going to be in the room where it happens advocating for these concerns when it comes to the platform that is going to come out of the convention. If there is no particular clarity around that, if there is no show of force, if you will, inside the room where it happens, then what has to be determined is what happens with the protests. They cannot be the only thing. They have to be the next thing in a line of things that continues to apply pressure until you get the result that you're looking for. And I'm not necessarily convinced just yet. When we look at the divergent interest of folks who may show up at the McCormick Place, at the United Center, that there's been enough conversation around different issues to turn the different issues into an agenda. And so part of my concern has been that we hear a lot of one offs. I haven't heard the beginnings of coalition building.
Mm.
Where are the folks who are supportive of Palestine in sync with those who are dealing with immigration, who are addressing the economic interests, who are dealing with the failure to continue to pursue diversity, equity, and inclusion interests, to deal with the educational gap, coordinated, collaborative process of coalition building? Then what we're going to have is a lot of sound bites and a lot of fodder for the news, the live shots when the different media outlets go live, whether it's during the convention or at the scheduled news hours. What really has to come away, and I think what would be a stronger commitment, is that during the convention, the demands on paper from all of the coalitions should present the people's platform. That platform should be comprehensive. It should be a demand before the Democratic Platform Committee comes away with the actual public platform, so that then it turns into a conversation around content. Because the issue of whether or not you're out of sight, out of mind, and the rest of it, if there were a demand, media tends to follow where the news is happening. If they don't want you in sight and sound of the convention, make the news. Reverend was always one to teach us, make the news happen where you are. If you're going to run into, because what you don't want to do is undermine the credibility. There's going to be a big challenge that if this turns into a distraction about giving lawful orders. Mark Fancher can really tell you this, and so can Daryl Jones. There's going to be a declaration at some point that they're going to issue a lawful order that you have to disperse and disband. There's going to be a recognized show of force at some point that's going to somehow be used, whether it's by those who will infiltrate or those who just deviate. To take us off message. How do we come away making sure we're on message in a coordinated way where the different groups who have valid issues and concerns actually build a platform that then allows us to make a righteous demand publicly as well as privately with the persons inside the room, so that it doesn't look like it's just one issue competing with another set of issues for solo time, right? For open mic time during the middle of the convention. It has to be comprehensive and it has to be coordinated.
Well, you know, and we do have to have intersectionality, because as Tariq Khalil from the American Muslims for Palestine rightly pointed out, we're spending our money overseas, and now things have changed. Now Americans are asking questions about where is my money going, because we see. I take the train a lot instead of taking the plane if I have the time, you know. And it's when you get on the train, and when you don't do a flyover in America, when you drive through America, you see the collapse of industry in the United States. You see poverty in the United States. You see the working poor in the United States. You see a lot. You also see a rail system that cannot compete with these new rail systems all over the world. You know, it's, you see a lot of the holes that need to be plugged up in the greatest nation in the world. And our money, you know, even President Donald Trump, when he became president, he saw some things, and he said, you know, he called according to press reports, he called President Jimmy Carter and he said, help me with this. He didn't have to call him, and I'm glad that he did, though. Showed a certain openness. And he said, what I see China moving way ahead of us, and I see us slipping behind. Mr. President, what is going on here? He said, well, first of all, we're at war everywhere, and they are building up their infrastructure, and they're not. They're in Africa building, making business deals. We're trying to take over. He said, so until we decide that we're not going to do war everywhere and we're going to build it home, this is what you're going to continue to see. Well, as we're watching these protests begin these demonstrators come to Chicago, Attorney Mark Fancher, there is the question is, why are they gathering? I mean, and they are doing that, and they are ready. And if they're going to have this march on the 21st, which they are, that means they're going to be here for a week. And really, we hope you will come to the Rainbow Push Convention, because that's where we will be gathering. Because you need to know how to march and all of that. I think Reverend Dr. Todd Urey can attest to that, because we're going to be talking about that too, and really giving you a safe space to talk about your issues. What about these demonstrations? What do you expect to see, and what are the rights of these demonstrators, Attorney Fancher, and is there any way for them to avoid the sabotage of these provocateurs really trying to disrupt their marches?
Well, there is a First Amendment right to demonstrate, but government at the same time is allowed to regulate time, place, and manner of demonstrations. And so we have to see how things play out in terms of defining and really understanding the specific limitations and rights that the demonstrators will have. But, from a broader perspective, a lot of this confuses me. I'm frequently accused of being weird and out of touch. But the fact is that the stakes are so high, lives are at stake. And I just try to be honest and clear-headed in how I think. And I think that Brother Khalil explained very clearly how and why the Democratic Party cannot and will not do the things that progressive forces want them to do, particularly in Gaza. And the reason that it cannot and will not do those things is it was not built to do them. So when people gather and they want to go to Chicago for the convention, I get it, because the eyes of the world are on the convention. And if they want to be seen and if they want to be heard, that's the place to be. But if in the minds of the people who are demonstrating, they're thinking our reason for being here, our purpose for being here, is to somehow coerce, urge, intimidate, try and push the Democratic Party to adopt a platform that reflects the type of progressive to revolutionary agenda that we have, then that's where I don't get it. Because to me, that's comparable to a large number of people assembling before a cruise ship and saying, listen, cruise ship, we see you floating in the water, but we demand that you fly like a plane. We demand it. It will not fly. It cannot fly because it's not built to fly. And so we have lots of people who are assembling, demanding that the Democratic Party do something that it cannot and it will not do. And my fondest hope has always been that the masses of people will recognize that fact and come together with a different purpose in mind. It's not to urge or to try and urge the Democratic Party to do something that it cannot and will not do, but to build something that's completely different. To understand that the objectives that we have can be and must be achieved in a different way. And that the resources that can and should be used for that, we have. and that to the extent that we don't have them, we can develop them through the development of relationships with forces around the world that share our interests and share our objectives. The people around the world came together in the face of an apartheid system in South Africa, and they forced the elimination of a system that if it had been left to conventional methods and channels, would have continued to survive. But what they essentially did is that they made South Africa a pariah state. And through the disengagement from it, they caused it to fall and collapse. In so many ways, and you've outlined many of them, Santita, the US empire is collapsing of its own weight. It has expended its resources in trying to dominate the world militarily and otherwise in far-flung places. It has failed to invest in the infrastructure at home. It has failed to sustain and support the people at home. And because it's doing that, it's going the way of every empire in history, which is it spreads its tentacles far and wide, fails to take care of home, and then collapses from within. Those of us who are living in the belly of the beast are positioned to administer the final blow if we're clear-headed enough to understand that that's what we can and should do. And it's through collaboration and cooperation with the forces around the world that share our interests and share our concerns that we'll be able to do that. You can see the effectiveness of the world's reaction to what's happening in Gaza. When you have the South African government coming before, the World Court or the International Court of Justice, and waging an attack on Israel, you see the effectiveness of that. You can see how Zionism shook, how imperialism shook, and it will continue to shake the more that people work together, collaborate together, and are very clear about what the agenda should and must be. I think that the idea of trying to persuade the enemy to stop being the enemy is a dead idea. And I think that the resources that are going into assembling in Chicago could be much more effective if we had a different plan, a different objective, and a different mindset.
Sheila Garland, these, having said that, these candidates, it's like they're allergic to poverty.
I think it's us folks that are living in poverty that have that allergy. We don't want to live in poverty. So.
No, these politicians, they have an allergy. If they say it, I think
they don't even want to talk about it
in hives. No, it's gonna make me sick. I can't talk about it. But you see, everybody here, we're talking about intersectionality, and Mark Fancher makes the point that I don't want to speak for you, Mark, but it's like, wait a minute, you have to understand the limit. You have to understand the limitations of this system and where you have to change it. And many of us, even though we want the change, we're afraid to make it. And we have to acknowledge what we're looking at. I mean, these corporations want these folks, poor people, to work at the same wages so they can make more and more and more money. And they're the sponsors of the party. Look, the donors overthrew Joe Biden and Pelosi and Schumer and Obama, and they did that when they also did that with Bernie Sanders too. And we keep seeing this over and over again, but we don't want to admit that this is what we're seeing. Sheila, we get poverty in the discussion.
Right. Poverty. Our campaign, I'm with the Poor People's Campaign, National Call for Moral Revival. And the campaign, through its research, because one of the things that Martin Luther King said is, it's okay to be loud, but don't be loud and wrong. So, we do our due diligence, and do our research. Poverty is the fourth leading cause of death in this country, one of the richest countries in the world. There are over 140 million poor people in this country, and that number is just growing. But I think that part of the problem is that we have a real sort of our hold and understanding on history, the political history of this country, and what drives politics. It's the economy. So if the economy drives politics on both sides, then we have to, I think, make the adjustments accordingly. And I understand what Mark is saying, what others are saying. First of all, I want to say what's happening in Gaza is absolutely, the genocide is absolutely untenable. And when you look at some of the data of folks who are in opposition to Gaza, I'm very proud to say that African Americans really stand in solidarity with the Palestinians across the country in almost every poll you see. And then I also want to say that it's really difficult because in this country, we don't have a mechanism where the people can have a a referendum at a national level to vote on where money goes. We don't have that. We don't have that ability to access in this country. There's no national anything that goes on our ballots at a federal level, at a national level, that says we want to stop funding this amount of money to the military. And so our only recourse is to protest. And I think protests serve two purposes. The first thing is that it allows you to gather, because you have to be able to gather your troops. So you have to get the issue out. And everybody has a different approach a different way about what that's going to look like. But then I think the second thing is that it really begins to call out, and we begin to see more and more the maneuvers of, as Mark calls it, our enemy, this system of capitalism. It's not our friend. And so, we're able to because you have to have troops in order to do what you want to do. And I've said this repeatedly in your show, Santita, when you have 140 million, that's 43% of the population of this country that's poor, there's something wrong. And yet and still there's the manipulation of the information and absolute just ignoring the fact that these amount of people are living in poverty. And I think that just the superficial addressing of these issues is not going to get it. But I also think that if you, like you talked about, going across the country and seeing, the demise of the industrial age and what is actually taking its place, when we see the movement of wealth in so many ways going upward in ways that I'm just absolutely, astonished at the ways that the corporations have figured out how to get money out of us and how to make profit as more and more people lose their relationship with the corporations through work and with the government through work.
And Sheila, they get us to agree. Because many people vote against their interests. And if you look at the corporate media, the way they frame the discussion in a way, they're not even talking about the tent program for refugees, which is a program that is dispersing these workers, not just throughout this country, Mark Fancher, all over the world. And they're saying we're trying to settle the refugees. No, you're not. You're trying to hire them for cheap.
And not just hire them for cheap. And I think, that's a whole lot I want to just kind of say. But I did want to say that, I lost my thought. But I did want to say that, with the amount of people that are becoming poor in this country, and the political resolutions that are coming out, they're not matching up. So, I'm sorry, Santita, I lost my thought. I had it there. I'm old.
No, honey. We all have to write these things down. But
yeah.
Because we're going to have Reverend Barber and you at the Rainbow Push Convention, which is why we're having this convention, just so close, because you've been helping to organize it, to the Democratic convention. Because it's like, since we're all going to be here, let's meet, let's talk. Because you have to have a list of demands, and the fact that we don't have poverty on the that it's not an agenda item. That's very quickly before I go to Daryl and Dr. Latrice.
Can I just finish my thought? I just want to say that one of the things that the campaign is doing to address this issue, our votes are our demand, and I think that we have to take into consideration, when you look at the study that we did, the Sleeping Giant, the Poor People's Campaign did, there are over 78 million voters in this country that are poor and low income. The campaign is now running we're going to do the midterms, we reached out to over 10 million voters. And we're talking about how do we get poor and low income people to vote as a block. And so in Illinois, 38% of the voting public are poor and low income. And what we're saying, we're not saying vote for this candidate or that candidate because we're nonpartisan. We're saying vote your values. But the one thing that the research showed is that the interests of the white supremacists, the former Trump supporters, we have a lot of those people who are connected to the campaign today. What they say is that the politicians don't come to us. We don't hear from them because poor and low income voters have been dismissed. And what the campaign is looking to do is that we have to have a way to unite those voters who could change the political course of this country if they saw themselves as a voting bloc and with growing power, especially in the swing states and in places where it's going to matter. And even in some places where you have a 1% to 2%, 3%, margin of victory, poor and low income voters could be the ones who make that difference. Now, I'm with Santita on this part. We got a beast, we got to destroy. I certainly agree with that. But in the meantime, we have to develop a program or a method to really begin to unite the disparate and polarized sections of our country. Because if we don't, we can't win. We have a.
But let me say this because time is drawing close. But no, say because I'm hearing you saying we don't need to reinvent the wheel. This has been done before. Reverend picked up the baton that had been dropped from Dr. King. We saw that when you register people to vote, you make them a voting bloc. All we have to do is pick up from where. Let's run the next lap of the race. It's not new. It's part of the work. I mean, what Dr. King did, what Reverend Jackson did was make them, Reverend Urey, a voting bloc. I mean, what did Reverend Jackson? He opened up his speech July 17, 1984 at the Democratic Convention. He said, "My constituents, the damned, the dispossessed." He didn't say the Democrats, because he brought these folks into the process. And I'm just saying all we have to do is continue that process because it's a process that's been started. We just have to start studying the history because, Reverend Jackson has said, Dr. King has said, Reverend Barber says, when we don't fight, we're guaranteed to lose. That's how Reverend started running. He said, but if you do fight, you just might win. We have to fight and we have to know how. But I want to make sure that everybody gets a chance to say something because we're going to have a longer discussion about that because I don't think, Reverend Dr. Urey, people really understand, not you, Sheila, but people don't really understand, Mark Fancher, how Reverend ran and what he was doing because he didn't get ultimately 7 million votes inside of the party. He had to bring them with him. And the party didn't want him. They still don't. Attorney General, it's true. It doesn't matter to him because this is a horse we got to ride right now in a binary system, but we don't have truly a binary system. I will say this and people get upset with me, but if we're truly going to be free in America, you should look at all of your options, all of them. I can't tell you I'm not going to tell you to vote for, I'm not going to tell you who not to vote for, but I want you to vote. That's important. And we need to stop censoring people. Stop it. And let's speak freely. Attorney Darrell Jones, where's your tinfoil hat? Just kidding.
I traded it in for something, but I don't know what it is.
I see it. Well, I see that beanie in the back, and it's for
But Santita, one of the things that I think is just so incredibly important is that and I think Sheila was lifting it up, and it's understanding the power, the impact of coming together as a block and being able to have the issues of our community and concerns heard by the elected officials and reflected in DNC platform. And that's part of what I believe Reverend Jackson was so masterful at, was getting the issues that were concerning the community into the platform of the DNC and understanding the impact that this would have on people across the country and ultimately internationally. And I think that part of what we see happening, because I like to put boots on the ground and the grassroots type of person. When we break it down along those lines and making it home, bringing it home for people. One of the things that Rainbow Push Coalition is going to be doing in a couple of hours here on Thursday is that they're going to be doing leading off the conference with education. leading off the conference with a banned book drive, leading off the conference with bringing people together, that learning factor. And that learning factor, I think, is the beginning piece to understanding and appreciating the fight against banned books and how voting is connected to that. Because what will be going on in addition to simply giving away the books away, but understanding the concept of banned books, how they became banned, and how that's connected to the people's right to vote, and what your voting power does and can do in that regard. That is the essence of what I think the RPC is all about, and the reason why you're going to have so many people coming to the Democratic National Convention to protest, because they want to have their voice heard, they want to activate their communities, and I believe that it's a larger activation that's possible that's from this, and those are the activation of voters, because it to me it's all about voting power. And it's the power of the vote. It's the community that has the strongest vote that is going to be listened to the most. So at this Democratic National Convention, I certainly look forward, and at the Rainbow Push Coalition that starts today, I look forward to watching the collective power come together. I look forward to certainly participating and empowering people, getting them registered, getting them ready to vote, and most importantly, and you hear me say it all the time, Santita, and I'm going to say it again today, encouraging people to go to vote.org to find out, are they registered? What is their status? Have they been moved? Have they been purged from the rolls? Has their polling place been moved? And preparing them to activate on the vote, because that vote is the power that has the ability to determine where the politics of this country go. What happens in Gaza, what happens around the world is determined by that power of the vote and who gets elected. We know that we have 40,000 people that have been at least identified that have been killed in Gaza as we speak. They're to the point now that they are burying people on top of people in the cemeteries that are there. Those are positions that need to be made known, and issues that need to be made known to the public, because we understand that the power of that vote can change a lot of this. But we've got to push the elected officials to change that policy. And I agree with Brother Khalil that you've got to push them. You got to push them to change. That's the only way we're going to get any change. But we've got to be certain that we're registered. We've got to be certain that we're voting, and we've got to be certain that we're getting the people in that we believe best represent our interests.
Amen. And let's get these numbers right. The Lancet study projects that 186,000 people have been killed in Gaza already. 186,000. They project 500,000 will be killed by the time this is over. We don't know. Now, thankfully, thanks to social media, you're beginning to see the body parts. It's horrific, but maybe that's what will wake people up, because it's happening with our money. And even if it was somebody else's money, it's just wrong. You can't have that. And then where is Haiti? Hello, where is that? I mean, I need, the Congo. Hello, what? What's happening in the Francophone countries? They are fighting France to get their money and to have their agency right now. All that is important. All that to me is on the table. But Dr. LaShawn Latrice, she is a community psychologist. Everybody be careful. Because Tarek, because when you're with these psychologists, everything you say can and will be held against you. She's taking notes. Dr. LaShawn Latrice, why are you marching? I mean, what are people calling for? Because we're welcoming people here in Chicago. On the ground, what are the issues?
The issues are like some of the previous panelists said, Khalil, Mark, many of our issues are centered on the fact that there are so many people that are dying right before our eyes in so many respects. We're taking what's happening in Gaza, we're taking the police violence, we're taking what's happening right in our own communities, and we're coming together to unify. And I agree that in order for us to strike the loudest, we have to stand in unity. Although there are a multiplicity of issues, we still have to remember that because there is one that's more pressing than the other doesn't make it less or more important, but we really have to unify so that we can get our voices heard. Everything from what's being taken from our communities, everything, the lives of people that are lost, the mothers who have lost their lives to gun violence and police violence, their children's lives. And at the end of the day, what has been politically motivated when these people use those stories on their campaigns, and then they never reach back to those people to offer any sort of assistance, any sort of policy change that matriculates into these events not taking place. So I think that's very, excuse me, that's very serious, because more and more people are now being brought before the media because of social media, because of the cameras, because of the idea that law enforcement needs to be transparent when they arrest someone. We see so many things that happen. It's a huge disservice. People are just sick and tired, and people are tired of just being pushed in front of someone and say, vote for this person because we all support this person. They want to see that change come all the way down to the communities. And we also have to educate people about how important it is to stand up and vote and to make their voices count.
And unison doesn't mean unanimity. Okay. So just getting people to say the same thing at the same time. That's not, you could have unity under apartheid. That's why the police were able to kill so many Black people and Indian people and on and on. No. That's not the point. So when you hear these diverse voices on this show, it's not that they don't support Kamala Harris, and some may not. And you're welcome here too. I happen to support her, 10 toes down. And at the same time, I will challenge her, because that is what I'm supposed to do. My mama and daddy have been married 63 years. My mother, all 5 feet, no inches of her, said I would never, ever be married to someone I could not fight. 6'3" and big. She said, oh no, I would never do that. You can't vote for someone you can't fight. That's crazy. And puts you in a horrible position. I need 30 seconds for everybody, because I want to give you a minute, and I want you to come back tomorrow, Tarek, because we need to hear these voices, and I want people to hear from you, not just about you. I'm tired of hearing everybody trying to interpret what everybody's positions are, Sheila. I'm sick of it, because I'm so sick of them not mentioning poverty. I mean, really. There's only one Reverend Dr. Barber, and he's absolutely brilliant, but he can't be on every show everywhere. It's not fair. And you're brilliant. That's why I have you here, because you articulate this mission and this issue as well as anyone I've ever seen. And somebody's got to stand up for the people who are being buried as we speak. The mothers on the west side of Chicago and the south side of Chicago and in Compton are crying like the mothers in Gaza, like some mothers in Israel are. Would you just stop? Just stop. 30 seconds for everybody. Attorney Daryl Jones, WOL DC. Everybody, please go every Tuesday at 12 noon Eastern Standard Time. 30 seconds for you. I was about to call you a reverend. Sorry, attorney.
No problem, Santita. Thank you. I encourage everyone to check your voter registration status. Go to thatvote.org. That's the first stop before you do anything else. Be certain that you're registered to vote. Be certain that you haven't been purged from the rolls. Be certain that you know where you're going to vote when election time comes. For this conference, it's going to be an exciting Rainbow Push conference with regards to hearing the agenda, setting the table, understanding what needs to be put in place. So you need to be there so you know what's on the agenda. And then push, like all get out for whatever your issue is for DNC. If you're involved in a demonstration, be peaceful in that demonstration. Look for agitators, provocateurs, and point them out and put them, if there are police there, point them out, be with the police and get that taken care of. Looking forward to seeing everyone in Chicago this week.
And say, I'm returning your people to you. That's what Castro said to Reverend when he was taking the hostages home. He said, they're spies anyway. Get them out of here. You can't make this stuff up. I knew that would bring a smile to your face, Mark Thatcher. 30 seconds for you. I've had some wonderful experiences.
Can't help can't help but love Fidel Castro.
I love him.
No, I have to be consistent, and while I continue to urge that we disengage completely from the empire, including the Democratic and the Republican parties, that is why I cannot support Kamala Harris. She may be a wonderful person, wonderful individual, but I know her limitations, and I know what she's going to be charged to do, whatever her personal preferences may be. So I have to disengage from that and continue the ongoing campaign to destroy the Democratic Party, the Republican Party, to help to build a revolution, to create something new and better that better reflects the ideals and the aspirations of the best in humanity.
Look, and he has the space to be here before you all say anything. He is part of the family, and he will be back tomorrow. Thank you. Sheila, Poor People's Campaign of Illinois. I've said it, and I'm going to add more to it before I take anything away.
Okay, Mark Fancher, I'm feeling you 100%. But I do want to say that, and everybody on the panel, but I want to say one thing that to leave with your listeners. In this country, as we see people invigorated to go register to vote, we see attacks on our rights to vote. We could resolve the issue of whether people could engage in voting by making voting day a holiday. So that people don't have to worry about getting off work. So there are other countries around the world who are quote unquote less rich and less, than the United States. That it is you have to go participate in the vote, and that's our entree into this whole idea around fighting for democracy. My vote should count for something, and so the fact that our votes are being attacked, that we're not able to go and vote, we're being dropped from the rolls, all these things that we hear from in one of the richest and so-called democratic countries in the world is an absolute abomination. And so, I think that we have our work cut out for us. This is not an easy empire to overthrow. We have a very clever ruling class in this country. They know they know things before we know things. I'm not going to watch my English. They know things before, but we have to be smart. We have to be smart.
Sheila, please.
I don't want you off the air. I will watch my language.
No, you're going to stay right there. I want to see your voice, your face. Reverend Dr. Yuri, I kind of lost myself. I was like, Sheila doesn't speak like this. She's had it. Reverend Dr. Yuri, 30 seconds, help me.
In the words of my sister Sheila, there's a difference between singing in harmony and singing in unison. At the end of the day, we have to be singing the same song. And sometimes you have to put in a word that folks understand because words have meaning. And so the dung, if we want to use the biblical phrase that Sheila's talking about, is real. The question is, what are we going to do about it? Dr. King said something that was really profound, and we should not lose it in this moment. There is something called being too late. This is the fierce urgency of now. And so what are we going to do with right now? Because if we don't deal with right now, we will never get to right next. And so that's the question that's before us. And everybody's got to find their lane, and let's do it together.
I just want to follow a preacher, but there you go. A Black one at that. Dr. LaShawn Latrice, we'll see you.
I cuss too. I just don't cuss on your show.
Thank you. And just everyone, BS, another word for that is balderdash. So perhaps let's put that in the lexicon too. Okay. Dr. LaShawn Latrice, I'm going to see you at Pushing at 11 o'clock.
Yes, absolutely. Absolutely. And I thank you all, and I thank Mark for being just so honest and transparent. It reminds me of how I even got invited to the show. I am one of those individuals who is not convinced about Kamala. I have not made that a secret, and I don't apologize for it. What I do think we need to realize is that sometimes being part of the norm and just blending in oftentimes puts us in a bad position. And so in times past, we've joined forces with people, and we've gotten an alliance because this is a party that's doing this and this is the party that's doing that. But we cannot forget that the Democratic Party has let us down time after time after time. And so we want to make sure that our voices are heard, and we don't want to give the other guy a vote, but we want to make sure that when we do cast our vote that people so horribly died to give us the right to do. We want to make sure that it's taken seriously. And so my not supporting this whole campaign is just kind of looking at it from a different perspective. But I also believe that until we continue to demand change, we won't get change. And so I think the protesting is necessary. I think, as Mark so eloquently put it, standing in front of the cruise ship to make it fly, I think it can fly. And I got the faith to see it fly. So I know that barriers don't get broken without any sort of resistance. And so standing with people like Tariq and Sheila and Daryl and everyone else on here, that's what's going to help us. So I just believe that we're more alike than different. And we have to continue to keep that in mind, that as long as we go along with the get along, everything's going to just remain the same. And right now it's time for a change.
Amen to that. And please, 30 seconds, Tariq. That's all I got.
Okay, all right. I'll try to be quick. First, I just want to say you always have on the best guests. I can sit here, listen to you guys all day. It's wonderful. It's a breath of fresh air. I wanted to highlight two things here. I want to highlight the fact that when we talk about atrocities throughout the world, whether it's in Congo, whether it's the Uyghur in Myanmar, wherever it is, and there's a lot to choose from. We have to understand the concept of moral value. There's nothing that's higher in terms of our engagement with this government, with our government as civics, than what is happening in Gaza today, because we are directly involved in the massacre in Gaza. Whereas in other parts of the world, they're happening and we can do something about it, but our hands are not dirty. Our hands are not bloody with the blood of the innocent that are being slaughtered. And the other topic that I want to talk about in 5 seconds here is the notion of hypocrisy. So one of the recent massacres, one of the worst massacres that happened in Gaza was the bombing of a school.
Yes.
With innocents praying Fajr prayer. And if you notice what Kamala Harris has said in the past with the Park Home shooting, she said that she was frozen in time when she went into that school. And Democrats always come out vehemently in opposition to the gun laws that actually exist, and they want reform of gun laws to prevent further mass shootings of schools here in the United States. Whereas we're actually aiding and abetting the bombing of schools in one of the most densely populated ghettos in the world. That line of hypocrisy is what we must call out the Democratic Party on, and we see it time and time again. And most recently, just a few days ago. So Kamala has been very hypocritical on this particular issue.
Well, you know what? I'm going to tell you what. Whoever you support, you must challenge them. My support does not come without strings attached. It just doesn't. And I want to, and that's why I have everybody here. Mark, you, Sheila, everybody here. You have equal weight here. I'm not going to tell you who to vote for. If people want me to be a mouthpiece for the Democratic Party, I'm not going to do that. What I want to do is create a platform where everybody can stand not in their truth, because truth is neutral. Stand in truth and let us resolve these issues together. Whatever happens, whoever becomes president, you must challenge them. Whoever becomes the nominee, you must challenge them. You need to be challenging Trump as well as Kamala Harris. Challenge them all, because they all have their hands upon the reins of power. Don't ever be on the outside of that, everybody. Don't ever be on the outside of that. And do not, I'm listening to my mama, don't you support someone you can't fight. If I can't fight you, if I can't criticize you, I'm not supporting you. And I reserve the right to change my mind. That's where we have to be, y'all. I love you. I love you, Mark Fancher. I love you, Sheila Garland. I love you, Tariq Khalil. Tariq, I want you back here tomorrow. I want everybody back. We're gonna talk about this. Dr. Latrice, I'll see you at Push. Reverend Daryl Jones, you do have a ministerial zeal, Mr. Esquire. And Reverend Dr. Todd Geary Esquire. I mean, I don't know how many terminal degrees he's going to get, but at least he uses them. I love it. I love you all. Everybody, Rainbow Push, let's head on over there. And it won't cost you nothing. Just get in. We'd like for you to register, but we're not going to turn anybody away. We're not in that business. Love you all. Cannot wait to see you. at the Rainbow Push Convention and here in Chicago. Let's do it, everybody, in a peaceful and loving way. And that's the real change that we want to make. Love you all. Bye-bye.